Away from starting.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Tower of Babel podcast. As always, I'm Julian Musha. I'm joined by Daniel D'Souza
What's up?
and Jeremy Kozier.
Hello.
And we are here to talk today about the latest in film and television news. It's been 1 month approximately since the last time we recorded, and I do apologize for that. We just like to cram all the news into one really big episode once a month now, apparently. No, we're going to try to be we found a better timing, better schedule, I think, for this, so we should be more regular going forward. What are the big news stories for this week? We have Green Lantern live action show coming to HBO Max. We've got we've got an episode, Dan, of Agree or Disagree, which I know is your favorite segment on the show. And we still haven't come up with a theme song. That's still just in the works, right? We'll figure that out somewhere. We have some news on the James Bond franchise, some interesting news on that front, and a bunch more. But before we get into that, please follow us on Twitter at TowerBabbleCast, Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast, and head over to our website, towerbabble.ca, to find everything we do, including the live streams that we're doing. This is being recorded live right now, and we are no longer on Facebook. We've reduced down from Facebook to now just Twitch, YouTube, and Periscope. And you can find out when we're going to be recording, because we do it so infrequently, by following us on Twitter. That's your best place to find that news. Okay. Is there anything? Our movie club. Dan, what's the movie club for this month?
Well, we just wrapped our previous month's movie club, which was Cabin in the Woods for Halloween. I thought that was a great recording.
I did too.
And then next month we went with a sci-fi theme, and we went with Coherence, or I went with Coherence and won the die roll.
Which is why we're changing the format.
Most importantly, I won the die roll.
Most importantly,
make sure we mention that, of course. Coherence, it's a great sort of low-budget sci-fi film, very cerebral. I'm very excited for you guys to watch it. Neither Jeremy nor Julian has seen it yet. I think you guys are gonna enjoy it. And even if you don't, I don't really care, because I love that movie.
Jeremy, what did you say the movie? I asked the movie club to the group chat what the movie was, and you just said a completely different. Contact.
He said Contact, which I should have put on that list. Man, Contact's one of my favorite movies too.
He just
but it's also funny, just like kind of remembering Coherence, but just saying Contact, because they're both
it's close enough.
Vastly different movies,
right? But close enough.
But also a movie that Daniel loves. So
I do love that movie, Contact.
Okay, so let's get into the news here. We should start by mentioning Sean Connery, the original James Bond on film from Dr. No and others, has died at the age of 90. So kind of a poor way to kick off Halloween, unfortunately. Sean Connery was always my dad's favorite, despite him looking more like Timothy Dalton. Yeah, as James Bond. Jerry, you're stepping all over my eulogy here.
Oh my we gotta put up a
side by side.
Yeah.
That looks like Timothy Dalton.
We'll let the audience decide.
Timothy Dalton actually came out with a statement today, saying that that they were good friends. That he always felt that Sean Connery was the best James Bond. So. And which is fair, because I don't think anyone would consider Timothy Dalton to be the best James Bond.
He's only like 3 movies.
but it's fine, because we're just gonna remember Sean Connery. Does anyone have any besides James Bond? Obviously, Indy's dad comes to mind for
Last Crusade.
I also remember
The Rock.
The Rock, yeah.
I watched
Hunt
for the Red October the other day.
I was just thinking of Hunt for the Red October.
That's a great movie. I've never seen it before. It's
You've never seen it before?
I hadn't. I watched it for the first time the other day.
It's one of the best submarine movies out there. Which is crazy that it has its own subgenre.
I really want to watch a submarine movie.
It's a subgenre, guys. It's a subgenre. Anyway, Sean Connery passed away at a respectable age of 90. So,
again, these ones, like, it's tough. Like, obviously nobody here knows him personally. It's as far as I'm concerned, this is one of those mission accomplished, deaths.
Sure.
Like, you make it to age 90, you had a great life, fulfilling family life and all that kind of stuff.
was basically defined one of the biggest characters of all time.
Well
done,
champ.
So that's Sean Connery. We have more James Bond news coming. I didn't feel like it was appropriate to have that news and then talk about James Bond right away. It didn't feel right. So we'll talk about James Bond in a little bit. Instead, we'll talk about the movie, the Uncharted movie, which I saw this hilarious headline from Slash Film, which was defying God and God in reality. The Uncharted movie wraps filming or something like that, which I thought was very clever. So they wrapped filming. We've got now glimpses at Mark Wahlberg as Sully. He kind of posted a picture of the mustache, which was pretty funny. And Tom Holland in full costume as Nathan Drake. We did a stream the other day. We were streaming Call of Duty Warzone. I asked Jeremy what he thought of the Nathan Drake costume. And Jeremy, do you want to just say it?
I don't remember what I said.
You can paraphrase yourself.
I know what I think about it, but what did you think?
Well, you just said you hated it. You just you're like it's the worst.
Are we talking about this right now? Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about no, Jeremy. We'll save it for later. I'm just teasing it for now.
I just think it looks like it's stripped right out of the game, which is what you want. But my issue is just with his age. I just think it looks like a cosplay more, or a photo shoot. Where
he's wearing
as
his
it played
clothes.
out, I just think it's too early to be wearing double gun holsters there, and I don't know. I think he looks like he's 19 years old. So
yeah, and this is essentially like an origin story, right? That we're telling here.
Yeah, it's like he's basically at the same age he was in the flashbacks in episode or chapter 4. It's
like Batman doesn't wear his bat suit, like the full bat suit, the armored bat suit with all the gadgets. He doesn't wear that in year 1, right?
Right.
That's the dynamic I think that Jeremy's experiencing there.
And it's not like that's a good comparison, but it's not like a perfect comparison. I just feel like it just looks like his final form. Right.
Do you think it maybe is like the last shot of the movie is something like with him in that outfit? You think that's possible?
That could be possible, yeah.
That's the Vader rising from the table at the end of Revenge of the Sith moment, I guess. I don't know.
Maybe they're gonna age him up digitally.
Yeah, that's right. It's actually a fast forward glimpse into the future.
It's like what they did at the end of Harry Potter.
Oh, I forgot about that. I completely forgot about that. What a bold choice. What a bold decision to make when that technology was not at its peak at the time. Yeah. You could even argue that it's still not quite there. Anyway, I think there's something to be said about the fact that this movie has actually wrapped filming, so we will actually see it. Remember how many times we talked about this movie and you're like, I refuse to discuss it more until we actually see it in theaters. So that's actually, we might not see it in theaters because
we've been talking about for what, at least 6 years or something.
It feels like forever. Like since as long as the podcast has been around, I feel like there's been rumors.
And there was a point in time where we were like, Mark Wahlberg was thought to be like
Nathan
completely
Drake.
removed. Nathan Drake. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But then eventually completely removed, and we were like kind of wiping the sweat off our forehead.
We were like, "Oh, that was a close one."
And then all of a sudden he's Sully, and we get Tom Holland, and it's just crazy.
The more I've been thinking about, I think he'll actually be an okay Sully. I think he has the swagger for it.
He's got that humor, the humor chops too.
Yeah, I think it'll work. I'm on the fence. Like, do we know of any of like the female leads in this movie? Like, is Elena in it? Is any of the characters we know, the female characters we know in this movie?
I would go out on a limb and say Elena's going to be in the movie.
You could go out it's got a big limb. It's a pretty.
I'll test those waters.
Right.
Guys,
okay. All right. Fair enough.
Be brave.
I just feel like we would have seen more or heard more about that for some reason.
Pretty sure they're married already and have their daughter too.
It's actually Uncharted 1, 2, and 3. They just put it all into one movie. So anyway, I just think that's interesting. It's weird that we've even gotten to this point.
Hopefully the music is just stripped straight out of the games.
I've been thinking about that as well, where I was just like,
imagine being in the theater listening to that,
hearing that dun 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 bum 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 bum. Oh, can't wait. That's literally, Jeremy, it'll be like that time we go to see the Transformers trailer. We'll just hear the theme song, get up and leave. Yeah. Okay, so Jonathan Majors from Lovecraft Country has been cast as Kang the Conqueror. This is kind of old. We probably were supposed to talk about this on last week's episode, but Kang the Conqueror, or last month's episode, in Ant-Man 3, which is weird that Kang would be in an Ant-Man movie at all. But here we are, and Jonathan Majors, pretty good actor, I would argue.
He's the main in Lovecraft?
That's right,
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
Ant-Man 3. But is the idea that Kang is going to be like the next big bad? Like
Dude's just so confused. There's like all these random words being thrown around.
The way he said Ant-Man 3.
I haven't seen Ant-Man 2 yet, so
really?
Whatever.
That's like the one Marvel movie that I think
it's pretty fun.
If you're a fan, I think most people have missed that one.
It's like I know I should watch it, and I don't really have a good reason not to. I just
I keep
skipping it.
The punchline is always you can skip that one.
Yeah, well, I guess.
But this just kind of shows that they're really planting the seeds on the next phase, multiverse wise. Especially since like I've been pretty vocal about how I'm not even excited about this current phase that we're kind of going into, just based off of the heroes that have left us and the heroes that are here now.
Right.
So I think like with this announcement and the multiverse and stuff like that, like
is Kang's typically a Fantastic Four villain, isn't he?
Originally, I think so.
Yeah, originally. Yeah.
So that's interesting. It's one of these kind of the
acquisition of Fox. You probably know Kang's original identity, right? Or no?
I don't remember. No.
Is he?
I think he's like some sort of like future.
He's from
family member of Mr. Fantastic or something.
No, I think you're thinking of his son, who's like this multidimensional.
Well, his son becomes Galactus to save the Earth, but that's a different story.
Right.
All I know about Kang is that it's about like he's essentially about time travel. He sits in that chair. I can't remember what the chair is called. So I think because Kang, to my understanding, is meant to be sort of the next Thanos, right? The next big bad.
We don't know yet.
Okay.
They haven't revealed the next big bad, but we know they have revealed Kang.
To be fair, Kang is bigger than an Ant-Man movie. Like he should be an Avengers movie at the very least, right? Even if it's just like he's the equivalent of Age of Ultron, right?
Okay, fair enough. So teased.
So I think that's going to lead into something bigger. I think the connective tissue there is the time travel thing. Obviously, Ant-Man's technology is what allowed them to go into the quantum realm and perform the time heist in Endgame. So,
well, speaking of other MCU stuff and other characters, Christian Bale and other villains even. Christian Bale has arrived in Australia to start filming Thor: Love and Thunder, and he'll be playing a villain. We don't know who. But also it's like with that movie, it's like the villain's going to be like this deep cut character that I'm not familiar with probably, but it's going to be Christian Bale, and I don't remember the last time I saw him play a villain, like just a straight up villain. I mean, the last thing we saw him in was The Prestige. He's got so. I mean, that's a little.
Whatever. He's a phenomenal actor. I think that's absolutely a pretty cool choice.
What I love about Thor: Love and Thunder and the last Thor film as well is that Taika has kind of brought this auteurness to that franchise and is basically allowed to do anything he wants and is attracting really high caliber talent to his movies. It's kind of against what the rest of the MCU was, which is like casting these lesser known actors in some degrees in these larger roles and kind of helping them develop their careers. This is taking some of the biggest actors in Hollywood right now and putting them into some lesser roles just as kind of filler, which is kind of fun. You just don't always see that all the time, especially with the it'd be really interesting to see how Christian Bale's method acting style works in Taika Waititi's kind of like more run and gun, kind of like very funny, whimsical, almost filmmaking. That's going to be I would love to be just on set watching that. That would be so entertaining. Jeremy, what do you think of Christian Bale, other than that he's just a great actor, which I agree?
Yeah, I think that Taika is pretty hot right now, so I think anybody in Hollywood kind of wants to be a part of his projects. He's getting what's her name back, right? For
Jane
Foster,
Natalie Portman.
Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
Excuse me, pardon me.
Who will probably become Thor at the end of the movie at some point.
Yeah, I think she's confirmed that she's at least going to be wielding Mjolnir at some point.
They think she's been.
Natalie Portman started like recently though.
Yeah, well, she basically said that like they're ripping from that the latest comic book run where Jane Foster is Thor. How much is going to be like 1-to-1 from that comic? Probably not much.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little different in the comics because it's like the being of Thor is manifested into a person, right? So Donald Blake would be his body is taken over by Thor traditionally, so it's a little bit different. That doesn't exist in the MCU.
I mean, it's just they always extrapolate. They don't usually go one for one. I mean, even the last Thor movie, they took elements of World War Hulk or Planet Hulk or whatever with the Gladiator type stuff.
Yeah.
And there's rumors of a Hulk versus Wolverine movie in development. I didn't put this; It just came to mind. I feel like that's an interesting way of introducing Wolverine into the MCU because that's the first place that he was introduced in the comics,
right?
Which I think is a kind of a fun concept.
That's why it's fun,
yeah. But I guess like our version of Hulk right now is
well, it depends, right? Anything could happen. Right now, he is Professor Hulk as far as we know, but something could change and something could trigger the.
I bet it would be a different timeline though too,
and I think you got it. Well, like in the future or in the past, do you think?
Well, I think it's not going to come out anytime soon. So we still have the multiverse stuff, and there are rumors that certain actors could come back or reprise roles. And if you're going to do a first appearance of Wolverine, I think it'd be pretty cool to somehow use Hugh Jackman with whatever technologies they want to use if they need to make him look younger or whatever, but have him finally leave the role with like a first appearance 1-to-1 translation from the comic.
Well, I don't think
against the Hulk type thing, because I mean he wanted to do Deadpool with Ryan Reynolds and have that kind of like a buddy thing.
They've been talking about it. I think it's a mistake not a mistake. Let's not put it that way. I think Marvel isn't interested in bringing back Hugh Jackman if it's reintroducing Wolverine and wanting to use Wolverine for new projects.
Well, it's more in a world of like the multiverse kind of. Even if that hasn't happened yet, you look at DC with the Joker and they want to do a bunch of one-offs. Yeah, it's a different strategy with the MCU with the continuation, but I think now the landscape's so different. Like, why not put unique special projects out there? So yeah, I don't know. Who knows?
I mean, yes, that would be cool, but I don't think it makes sense for Hugh Jackman at his age also to be doing like a Wolverine origin story movie either necessarily, right? I'm basically okay with him never playing Wolverine again after kind of going out on that high note of Logan.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
And even if we don't ever see him, other than maybe like a cameo in a Deadpool movie, I'm kind of okay with that. Anyway. On to other things. Animorphs creators exit movie adaptation over creative differences, which really begs the question, who knew there was an Animorphs movie in development?
I'm super confused. I had no idea there was one. I read every single one of those books as a child.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, there was a TV show way back. It had Iceman in it way back before he was Iceman. Ashmore. And yeah, he was actually in The Boys season 2 too. No, he was not Iceman, but he was... Yes, it was Sean Ashmore, and he was actually in The Boys season 2 as well.
Yeah, as Pyro.
Yeah, basically. So that's fun. I just put this in here because I was surprised to find out there was one at all in development.
So for anybody who's not familiar, Animorphs is a series. It's a book series about an alien race that came to Earth.
And
they can morph into animals, and then there are certain humans that I don't even remember how but they were somehow imbued with those powers, so they could morph into like the one character that I remember. His name was Tobias, morphed into a hawk all the time.
Right. There's also brain slugs.
Yeah, those are the bad guys.
Yeah, they're the bad guys.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty clever. So you have these characters who can transform into animals, and then you have the bad guys are characters or creatures that can take control of
a human body,
which is pretty cool. Anyway, there was a short-lived television show in like either early 2000s or late 90s, and it was not very good. But I think the Animorphs deserves another shot at like a television series, not.
So these are the books with the covers where like they show like
changing.
5 pictures changing.
Yes,
Okay.
And the middle ones are always super weird looking. Yeah,
I just thought they were so dumb looking to begin with.
That too.
Anyway, I thought they were cool. Back that's like early sci-fi, like tween sci-fi stories.
Yeah.
Okay. So Quibi is officially shutting down. You guys remember Quibi? Vaguely.
I never subscribed to
No,
it. And obviously, this
It's like TV for your cell phone or something like that.
Yeah, well,
it was like shows that were designed to be watched on a phone,
right?
Specifically,
And then short, like
Yeah.
like short burst content. And they spent so much money. So its final day saw the service with only 72,000 paid subscribers, which is, if they were making podcasts, would be great, but not. They weren't doing that, and had spent, get this, $1.75 billion. They just blew through almost $2 billion.
That's how any of these things work, right?
I guess, but I don't.
You lean on investments to the point that it becomes profitable.
Yeah, but the idea was bad in the first place.
No comment. I mean, whatever.
So,
they tried something and failed.
Right.
Well, the execution was bad. I mean, the idea with what everyone has a cell phone device basically.
Right.
It's just, maybe it's too soon, or it just wasn't the right way to do it. Maybe it shouldn't even exist because people
because we have YouTube and we have all these other
It's
types of services.
Irrational response to perceived demand. And I don't think that it makes sense the way that they thought about it. Like,
No.
The idea behind it, anyways, having not been there, is that people, yes, like you said, Jeremy, everybody has a phone all the time, and people like their content to be shorter and shorter and shorter, like YouTube videos.
But they also like good, high quality content. So what if we make short form, high quality content for the devices that everyone has in their pocket? Boom.
There's
business.
apps
Awesome.
there's apps for all of that,
right?
And that's what they didn't realize, that we're not going to pay to get into those apps in a separate app that might have it all.
Well, and they also failed to make their shows viral, where you couldn't share content out. It was really hard to share Quibi content, so which is really antithetical to the whole youth on their phone.
Here's a question for two of you though.
Right.
How often do you on your phone, on your mobile device, watch Netflix?
Almost
Amazon
never.
Right?
Basically never.
Exactly. So,
but also I think maybe a little bit older than the demo that they were.
Do you think a lot of people use their phones, their little mini phones, to watch these
I think
things?
so.
Yeah?
I think
they do. I think they do.
Ask your nieces and nephews and stuff.
I've seen coworkers, they set their phone up during lunch or whatever, and they'll get through TV shows or whatever.
I'll tell you guys something crazy. You guys are gonna hate this. I'm pretty sure I've told you this before. Okay. I watched Band of Brothers, the HBO miniseries, on an iPod Nano. On an iPod Nano, Daniel.
What?
Yeah.
What a loser.
What I know.
So you didn't watch it. You basically didn't.
I watched the entire series at lunch at Red River, watching it on my iPod Nano.
So stupid.
Well, that was the only the iPhone didn't exist at that time. There was no iPhone. But I mean, maybe you'd be upset if I watched the whole series on my iPhone too. But
why wouldn't you just have a laptop then? I don't get it.
I didn't bring my laptop to school at the time. I don't think you even had a laptop at that point. To be honest, I think I was still using a desktop computer. Well, different times, guys. It was a different world.
Certainly that.
I still had a flip phone at that point in my life. I'd figured out a way to take the most high quality television show made at that time and put it onto a screen the size of a stamp. Okay. So R.I.P. Quibi. So there's a couple COVID related stories here. Dan, did you see this? The trailer for the pandemic thriller Songbird?
No, I haven't.
From Michael Bay.
It's
too soon. I think it's too soon. It's set in a dystopian reality where COVID has mutated and we're in a year 4 of lockdown. It's terrifyingly.
So you knew it could happen, and you're just dreading it. You just don't.
Yes, I knew this. And by the way, this is the first of many. There's going to be in the next 5 years, we're going to see a series of series.
Don't you think you're
But it's content. It's content that's relatable though.
It's too relatable. It's too. No one we're in an actual lockdown. No one wants to watch a story about the worst case scenario of a lockdown.
I know that this is.
What do you mean? Everybody watched what's that movie on Netflix when?
Oh yeah. That's true.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Contagion.
Right.
I don't know. I don't like it. I mean, again, I realize this is an extreme example, but you wouldn't make a movie about a disaster while the disaster is happening.
Yeah, they call it COVID.
And you get Michael Bay to direct it.
Yeah, Michael Bay to direct it.
Just because known for his subtleness and deft hand.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of Julian. You do this a lot when you say you talk about a movie. You say, do we need this or do we? what are they trying to say? What's the message? And I've always been sometimes you can just make a movie because you want to make a cool movie and enjoy it and whatever. What is the fucking point of this movie though? Because that is deliberate.
To-
That's
it's
about
to-
Maybe if this is depressing because it's too relatable,
It's
the
to
ending
capitalize.
somehow
that's what it is. It's
picks you
capitalizing.
up.
Well, I don't think this movie is going to pick you up. Jim, have you seen the trailer for this?
No,
It's
I'm never gonna watch
played.
the
It's
trailer.
played like a horror movie. Like
Unless they donate every dollar they make off that movie to some sort of COVID relief help.
Oh no, it's
thing.
going to go
I'm never
buy.
gonna watch this.
Stupid.
It's
It
going to
makes
buy.
no sense how Michael Bay is the director of this.
It's going to buy Michael Bay's. Well, maybe he's just the producer. I'll have to double check that. Hold on, Songbird. I know he's involved.
Either way, ill-advised. For right now.
It's the best example of too soon, right? It just doesn't. Like you said, it just doesn't need to exist right now. The director is Adam Mason's.
Too soon,
produced
also
by
too
Michael
close to
Bay.
home. It's happening right now. To a lot of people are being affected by this every day. It's not the time to make a fun movie about it.
It's not fun. It's played like a horror
regardless.
movie.
It's not the time to make a dramatization about it.
Yeah, it's crazy. For the record, I also agree that it's crazy, and I probably won't watch it. Just like I haven't watched it.
I'm never gonna watch it, and I for sure won't even watch the trailer.
Fair enough. Production on Alicia Vikander's Tomb Raider 2 has been delayed indefinitely due to COVID. That's unfortunate. I like Alicia Vikander, so I want her to get work. So, Sherlock Holmes 3 with Robert Downey Jr. is on the back burner, also according to director Dexter Fletcher. That's unfortunate because I've liked those movies as well. Did you guys enjoy the RDJ Sherlock movies?
I think I've seen the first one. Yeah, they're
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's his name?
There is David
Pearce?
Chen calls them a good sit.
Guy Ritchie.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously this one's not directed by Guy Ritchie, or isn't planned to be. So, which kind of takes a little bit of the fun out of it. Jeremy, have you seen Guy Ritchie's latest gangster movie? What the heck is it called? It's like on a Netflix.
The Gentleman.
No, but I want to. I remember digging the trailer.
Yeah.
Like the actors involved. So I think I'm.
It is just the quintessential. Like his movie. It's just everything you'd expect out of his movie is in the. It's great. It's got some parts that aren't as great, but I just think it's so much fun. Hugh Grant actually is absolutely amazing in the movie. Just he kind of plays this like flamboyant newspaper guy. Oh, what a fun role to see Hugh Grant in. You know, in a Guy Ritchie gangster movie.
I haven't seen it either.
Oh, you guys need to watch it. Fun stuff. Okay, so back to some good news. Michael B. Jordan is going to direct Crete 3 as his directorial debut. Crete 3 is a movie that I didn't necessarily know I wanted, but now that it's being directed by Michael B. Jordan, I guess that's the way he leaves the B in there. You can't just call him Michael Jordan.
Yeah, of course it is.
This just dawned on me now. And I just loved the first two Creed movies, and second not as much, but it would be interesting to see what they do with 3 if they can kind of let loose the shackles of the Rocky movies a little bit. Would be nice.
Is it following a similar formula to the Rocky movies though?
We don't know. We don't know if anything about the story for 3,
but like 1 and 2, because one kind of
yeah,
the first one kind of does. The second one is kind of like a sequel to Rocky 4. They bring back Drago and Drago's kid,
right.
and it's actually pretty good. Not as good as the first one, I'd argue, but still pretty good. And then now 3, if you're following that same logic, he's going to now start training another new kid. That doesn't make sense. I think Michael B. Jordan still has to be the kind of like the Creed himself has to still kind of be the lead, I think, in this movie. Jeremy, are you excited by a Creed 3? I remember you were blown away by the first Creed movie.
Yeah, the first one was great. I mean, and I think the director of that one went on to do Black Panther, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
that's right.
Creed 2, they got a different director, so it was.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't praised as much as the first one, which led me to not kind of go rush out and see it. And I guess I still haven't seen it, but
you still haven't seen it? Oh man, Jeremy.
But
as a Rocky fanatic, I'm surprised you haven't. To be honest.
Well, just because the director change, I feel like swayed my want to see it right away. But this is kind of cool to see Michael B. Jordan get this land this directing role for and starring in it. I mean, that's really cool.
I feel like it's got to be hard to direct and star in a movie at the same time. I have to imagine.
Definitely.
For sure,
right? Like, how do you maintain
you're doing two people's jobs?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, no matter what.
And like, how do you direct yourself?
Well, I think you'd have to your pre-production and your planning would have
Right.
to just be perfect, and the schedule. Like you'd have to storyboard everything. You'd have to have all the meetings for all the scenes to get everybody, on pace to know what to expect, and then when you're there, just execute the best you can,
Sure.
because
Because you're
he's
too
gonna
close
be
to it, right?
yeah,
Like
for sure. Yeah.
you couldn't be like, I'm not liking this version of this take. Like it might be a bad take, but you can't tell. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or you might know it's a bad take, but you don't know even if your good take is what is the right fit because you're the one doing it.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be really hard to do.
For sure. Yeah, it's all his vision,
Yeah.
right?
It's
Mostly.
all his vision, but it also, because he's new to it, I'm sure he's going to find the best like DP or someone who he really enjoys working with or loves their work, and maybe uh, give more faith to their decisions and stuff like that. I think to speed up that process, if you have to, you know what I mean, instead of relying solely on your decision after every shot. If you got to, you know what I mean, like stopping and going
it's
to
a
watch it.
collaborative process.
Yeah.
But and it to his credit, and a lot of this has already been to his credit, but it obviously shows that he has a lot of passion for that franchise,
Right.
That he's investing into it. So that bodes well for the movie itself.
I don't know if you have the story here, but with Michael B. Jordan, but about Static Shock.
Yeah, right next,
Okay.
Right underneath it. Actually, yeah, he's
Okay.
going to be producing a live-action Static Shock movie. Does that mean he's starring in it as well? I guess he couldn't. Well, no, he could. He could. I was getting him confused with the villain from from Black Panther.
Yeah, it sounds like he was starring it, but now that you mention it, like, I don't think he has to. I mean,
Yeah.
it's still cool that he'd be involved and again, more passion.
Well, it seems like he's just generally getting involved in more work behind the camera anyway, which is, I think, it doesn't always work for every actor. Not every actor can make the switch to directing and producing in quality, is maybe high quality as some of their performances are at times. I guess time will tell with Michael B. Jordan, but I think it's still cool that we're getting a Static Shock movie. Did you guys ever watch the show at all much when you were growing up? It was out around the same time as like Batman Beyond. It was pretty good, and it dealt with some culture issues, I think, fairly well as well at the time for an animated cartoon.
Yeah, and it'll have to again.
Yeah,
that's a hot button stuff right now.
I think now you don't think you can make this movie without addressing it. There's just no way. It's like you couldn't make a Black Lightning movie without the same idea. Although those characters are eerily similar. So Simon Kinberg is set to produce and write, I guess, or co-write a Battlestar Galactica movie for Universal. This is another thing that does need to exist. We don't need a live action Battlestar Galactica movie. We don't.
I don't see why not. I mean, the series itself is already pretty damn perfect. But a modern version of it.
But why a movie?
Maybe they're trying to reignite the series, right? Maybe the movie is like that
the spark that ignites the rebellion. Is that what you're saying?
There was like a what do they call it? It was like a mini series that they did before the series.
Oh, they did
as a jump off point.
Yeah, whatever the name of the planet was. Yeah, but that was a prequel series, right?
Yeah.
So I just feel like a movie for Battlestar Galactica, I don't know if it necessarily works because the story, I think, from having watched the whole series, is kind of really fits more the
because it's prolonged, because
the long form.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be that. They could tell a similar story in a movie.
If you're gonna do a movie and you're gonna base it off of like that stuff that we already have, just do a movie that's like really good, like that pilot episode where I think it's called 33.
33.
Just do that as a movie. I think that you could, with like really high production levels, I think that would be a lot of fun. It would kind of like be harken back to like the TNG era Star Trek movies a little bit in that kind of tone and feel. Yeah. I think if you're gonna do it, I feel like maybe that's the best way to do it. And Simon Kinberg's not a bad name to be attached to it, I would say. Jeremy, do you have any attachment to Battlestar?
You there?
No, I don't.
No, okay.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep, you can. Okay. Daniel Kaluuya is making a live-action Barney movie, and the only reason this is in here, and I know, Dan, you fought against putting this in here because I just want to put this. I want to make people aware. I want people to be aware of how insane this concept is.
it's a live action
Barney
the
movie.
dinosaur movie.
Yeah, that's correct. And this is a quote from Daniel Kaluuya, who's, I believe, the director. Barney taught us, quote, "I love you, you love me, won't you say you love me too?" That's one of the first songs I remember, and what happens when that isn't true? Question mark. Dun, dun, dun. What an insane concept.
Why is that insane?
Well,
the concept of a live-action Barney movie is kind of insane. I would assume this is being produced for children.
I would you'd have to hope so. But the part I left out of this because it felt I just didn't want to say it was that he said it was going to be darker than the original television show. But like
darker.
No shit. like
it's a gritty reboot.
So then
Barney.
I don't know.
It's for older. It's for people who have the memory of that show.
There's why would I, as an adult, be interested in seeing a live action Barney movie that deals with the non reciprocal?
Yeah, I think it's
love.
a terrible idea, but I think it's common now to examine media or whatever IP that could be relevant to adults today based off of our memories of it. But yeah, I don't think it's like necessary or even make sense to go this route. I don't know.
No, it makes no sense at all. It's insane. It's the reason I put this in here.
I'm speechless, really.
There's no reason. It was just tough for a podcast, but yeah, there's just it's. I think it's everything that's
like
wrong.
What happens if love isn't true?
What happens when you don't, like you said, reciprocate?
Right.
Which is it's a good message, and
sure, it needs to be learned. It's something that's like it's like you're not owed feelings. I think is maybe one of the themes there, but like. Why would you don't need to use Barney as the way to send that message? You know what I mean?
Or if you do, at least do it earnestly. And we're also assuming that it's not earnest, right? With the dark gritty reboot stuff. So maybe it is in earnest, and maybe it is for kids, and it's a nice message, and I'll never watch it, and it's fine.
and as long as your nieces and nephews never watch it either, and then we're all good.
They're welcome to watch it. I just
okay.
Or if it's a dark gritty reboot and Barney eats people, then I'm in as well. If Barney acts like an actual dinosaur and eats bad guys,
right.
then I'm in.
So
if it's a horror, then I'm in.
Okay, all right, fair enough. The Fast and Furious series will conclude.
He'll
with
be
F10.
like Pennywise.
What an insane thing to do! What a crazy thing to do to someone's childhood.
His mouth is gonna enlarge with CG and eat a child.
Gross. Nope. Okay, we need to change it. I mean, I get that we are recording this on Halloween, so I guess it does fit the theme. Yeah. But yeah, no. The Fast and Furious series will conclude with F10 and F11. Justin Lin will return to direct both. Nice to hear that's going to conclude, and that Justin Lin is going to be directing.
And then it's
the
F10
long nightmare
and
is over.
F11.
Why not end with 10? Why would you end with 11?
F11 sounds so much cooler, right? Is that not
like F1
a name of a jet
with an extra 1? I don't think it's the name of a jet. The F11, no. It makes me think of like F1, like racing, but then with an extra 1.
Mm.
So it's like F1. They'd be racing F1 cars, and then an extra 1 will come sliding, like crashing down in the thing.
That series is running its course. And by the way, that's just the Fast and the Furious, right? That
that's
doesn't
correct.
mean Hobbs and Shaw
that
will
doesn't
continue.
mean that there's no spin-offs. Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. Have you seen Hobbs and Shaw, by the way? Yeah, neither have I. Which I do like the Fast and Furious.
They're fun. They're great action movies.
Yeah.
Just popcorn flicks.
Especially, and by the way, Justin Lin, who directed Fast 5, I believe, I think is probably the best director who's been on the franchise. So it's nice to see that he's going to be coming and closing it out.
There's also definitely an F10 jet and an F11. It's every F.
all the Fs have a jet. Okay. Do you think they'll actually go to space?
They have to. They absolutely
They've been like making fun of that. They've been making that joke for a while.
They have to. That's the you have to escalate. That's the next level. They've done everything on Earth. No, they haven't yet. But
submarines.
They haven't jumped a volcano. Yes, there was a submarine actually. There was a submarine.
It came up through the ice.
Oh yeah, it beat them in the race when it slid on the ice.
Have they done something with an aircraft carrier?
No, I don't think so.
That'd be cool.
They haven't really used a lot of planes because it's mostly about cars.
Yeah, it's about cars.
Right? Aircraft carriers are tough because it's just aircraft. I mean, I guess space again. They haven't jumped a volcano. Volcanoes are pretty cool.
Driving cars through hurricanes.
That's a good point. No hurricanes yet.
Well, there's 2 more movies. I'm sure they'll get through it all.
That's a good point. Which one is the one that's supposed to come out? This year? 7, I think.
No, it's past.
No,
7.
that's already out. I think they're on 8 or maybe even 9's already out.
Maybe.
I don't know.
No.
So then 8 was the last one. Fate of the Furious.
Right. Yes. they just took the joke of putting 8 into something with like it's the same joke that people have with like their novelty license plates, so I guess it makes sense. Yeah. Okay. George Miller, speaking of good directors, George Miller is officially returning to direct the Mad Max prequel series Furiosa. When we first talked about Furiosa, we talked
series?
about film.
Okay.
Prequel film. We talked about how they decided that they weren't bringing Charlize back and they were going to cast a younger actress, and that George Miller probably wasn't going to be directing. But finding out that George Miller's going to be back, I think, takes this movie from like it's cool that there's going to be continuing to make Mad Max movies to fuck yeah, can't wait. That movie is insane. Fury Road is insane in the best possible way, and I would love to rewatch it. I haven't seen it in a while, and I would love to own it on 4K Blu-ray as well, which I also don't have. But like that's one of those, like, if you're gonna own physical media, that's one of the ones you should probably have. It has a guy on a bungee cord and pyrotechnics playing a guitar. It is insane. And that was live. They actually put that in the movie.
The coolest thing is all the practical effects, the way that it's shot. Yeah. It makes it so real and tangible.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy, does this excite you?
Of course. Mm-hmm. I mean, how could it not? Like you said, just news that just makes you feel good.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
And they've already casted the younger Furiosa, I believe.
But I think she's I'm not familiar with her work. She's fairly unknown, I believe, at this time.
Yeah, I think she's like 24 years old or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of news that makes you feel good, Lego Star Wars Christmas special is coming out November 17th on Disney+. I just think it's fun that Star Wars is doing another Christmas special. They're using Lego to kind of soften the blow a little bit.
They're using Lego because Lego can wink at the other one, right?
Right.
They make those meta jokes.
The original Christmas special, which introduced, I think, Boba Fett technically before he appeared in Empire.
And Ewoks too, right?
I think so. And maybe not Ewoks.
Well, they were in the Christmas special now. It's before.
I don't know. I have never seen it.
Don't disrespect the Ewoks.
I've never seen it. No, but no. It's Chewbacca it's Life Day. It's like their Christmas. Yeah. It's really weird. Anyway, no one really talks about it. It's not really when it is, it's talked about in kind of like not
as it should be.
Right. And
it's talked about appropriately, I'd say.
Yeah. And so they're gonna give it another shot. I kind of like it when these type of properties do a Christmas type of thing every once in a while, like the Muppets Christmas and like that kind of stuff. It's kind of fun, to take these characters and kind of pull them out of their world and kind of just hang out with them in a kind of holiday setting. It's like such low stakes that it's just nice to have on, Okay, James Bond. I mentioned we were going to talk more about James Bond. No Time to Die is being shopped to streaming services. MGM has been in talks with Apple TV Plus and Netflix. Now, this is mostly rumored, but it's coming from good sources. And presumably others. If there's 2, there's probably more. For as much as $600 million. Now, it's assumed that that's not just for the streaming rights to No Time to Die, but the entire catalog of James Bond movies. Keep in mind that Spectre took home $800 million globally in its release a few years ago. It's insane to think of a movie like No Time to Die being released wide on streaming. It's even crazier to think that there's a price tag, that there's a streaming service out there who has $600 million to spend on that. Apple has a lot of money. They're very rich. They could afford it. And maybe they need that to get people to subscribe. So Netflix has a lot of money as well. And it's just the whole thing is crazy to me. And the part that makes this, I think, the most interesting is that for MGM, this is basically their only proper IP. They've sold everything else off. They're just a James Bond company, basically, at this point. So, and the one thing that's really interesting about James Bond stuff is that when movies come out, there's so much more merchandising and like associated brand buy-in than there is for almost any other franchise. Watches, cars, all these things are all
Slurpee cups.
like that's like that. No, that's like Marvel movies. You get the Slurpee cups, but like it's just like these high end brands spend a ton of money for when James Bond movies come out.
Yeah.
And when something like COVID happens and it drags out releases, that money is not being recouped properly. They're not getting it. Like if they don't release it, if they can even just get 600 million, they can keep the franchise alive.
Right.
If they have to wait till next year, they might basically go bankrupt. Barbara Broccoli will have to use her millions on something else because James Bond won't, be profitable anymore, not in the current form. So it's kind of a crazy time to be alive. This is all at the same time that they're looking for a new James Bond to take over for Daniel Craig after No Time to Die. So lots going on within the James Bond series. What do you guys think about a streaming service paying upwards of $600 or more million for a movie like James Bond?
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. I can't really fathom $1 million. Never mind 600 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it would have to be something like that because those companies are in a position to even play with that IP and existing like roles within that IP, like a Daniel Craig and everybody involved, and then secure that sole custody over it. So they like MGM made the investment, and it just to me it just kind of showed that they need that profit like now to keep everybody happy,
keep the lights on.
Yeah, or whether it's just investors and whatnot. And I think it's a reasonable price considering what it is and who made it. And if you get this product, like you're going to draw attention to yourself, you're going to gain money from it, but is it worth it? I don't know.
It would be the first at this point. It would be the kind of the first movie of that scale. I guess maybe Mulan would maybe fall into that category.
Well, okay, my first question though, the way that's phrased, it sounds like it's just the one movie, not the
to me too.
franchise.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I did a little bit more digging on this. Again, it's all coming through sources because this isn't being officially revealed because they don't want to cool the kind of the theatrical market on it, right? But I don't think you buy No Time to Die streaming rights without getting the rest of the film rights with it.
I don't know. Maybe they know MGM's in a tough place, right? Like
what?
If
right, I guess. But what's the play there to eventually buy the IP from MGM and say basically
you do it once, you pilot it, you see how it goes, and then depending on the numbers, you decide what route to go down. What like buying that movie for 600 million is a lot. If it includes the previous catalog, great. It would be more about the future of the James Bond IP.
Well, yeah, but
that's a question.
And I think ultimately what MGM wants is for it to stay with them, and I don't think Sony's attached to it anymore in the way that they used to be. But there might be a day where MGM has to sell off the James Bond rights, and then they just go back to being a casino company. And maybe it's one of the streaming services that gets it, and we get like a live action James Bond TV series, which I think would be pretty cool.
They could be a bit more creative with it. There could be movies and series, and shorts and whatnot,
and
spin-offs.
Yeah, and if you get the right actor who can kind of like who has the cachet of a film stuff but can do the streaming as well, that's like a really cool quote unquote cinematic universe. You could spin off a Felix Leiter series.
We're going this route whether we like it or not already. Like even Disney announced that they're focusing.
That's right.
You know what I mean? They're refocusing like everything they have towards streaming because they're trying to get ahead of the curve, and they are for a potential long-term future. And MGM is just trying to gain a quick buck, like a big buck, off of their investment that they made right now.
Well, MGM has owned the Bond series for a long time. This is a long-term investment, right? Every film, and that's the thing. I'm
talking about 600 million, right? That means they paid whatever it was, 300 million to make the movie,
right?
So they want to just get that profit now.
They want to, instead of speculating on what might come in the future,
right? And examples of Tenet and like a big movie like that, kind of failing. And yeah, Wonder Woman is going to be a huge turning point this December if that sticks the landing or not, or moves completely.
I don't think it's coming out this December. And Tenet's actually a really good kind of comparison too, because it feels very much like a James Bond movie in a lot of ways. think a little bit more complex than most James Bond movies.
Just a little bit.
But it does have that
over
feel.
how complex it is.
And Nolan has said that he was the Bond was an inspiration for that movie. So they're looking at that and they're saying, well, if Christopher Nolan can't do it, is Bond going to bring butts back to the seats? Maybe. I would love to see this movie. Everything we've seen of it, like all the trailers look very good. It's right up there. Like there's the Wonder Woman 1984 trailer. I was like, holy crap, can't wait for that movie. It's been done forever. We're not seeing it. This James Bond movie, when they released that trailer, I was like, wow, okay, this is really interesting. I think they really took some notes from their last kind of failure and really rejiggering it. And then this one's a little left field, but the Top Gun sequel also had like a really interesting kind of premise, and the trailer was like gripping, and the music
was perfect.
The music was good, and like they were saying, like the stuff they were doing with like the cameras inside of actual fighters, and like that's something you have to see in a movie theater. And I was like, can't wait for that. That would have been out this summer.
They're doing it right by not even like talking about that movie anymore.
I think so.
Because let's just forget about it until it's ready, I guess, to come out. I mean.
So the other part to this story is that they're looking for another James Bond. There's the search is on, and then this happens every once a decade, basically. Sometimes longer. And,
it looks like they wanted Tom Hardy there for a bit. That was people were reporting on that.
Well, apparently he was up for the role when Craig was up for the role, but he was too young and too. I think he was saying he was too big, like he was.
Right.
But so that's interesting. I think he would actually be a good Bond. They're saying that the role will have to be reimagined, which is I think interesting because there's something that's challenging. It kind of, to me, it plays into the same idea of, it won't be a woman. They're not going to change the gender bend the role. And they're saying that they would, we should create new roles for women, which I agree. There's certain characters whose gender is important to the role. I think James Bond's gender is. I think there's something to be said about like his heritage as a character, and not all of it's good. Like there's like the womanizing and all that kind of stuff. But when you say to reimagine the character, what do you think they mean by that? To remove some of those more.
I think it just means there's so much connective tissue between all the other ones in what that role like needs to have. So to me, it just seems like they're going to just change some things up and not have like specific things always have to be there.
Well, I guess, but if you describe James Bond, most people would describe him in a similar way, right?
Sure.
If you start changing that description, is that the same character anymore? Like, you know what I mean?
His name's James Bond.
I guess, but like, I think that's not like the defining trait isn't his name; it's his characteristics.
Well, it's in his job,
right?
Right.
Okay, so
he's
a spy.
Gonna be a secret agent who's going to be good at what they do.
Has to have a nice car. Is that like gadgets?
It's just kind of like the perfect character because it has like the humor, the intensity, the action, like all the. It's like the men want to be him type thing, right?
Right. That's the way they described it before. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could tone down some of the kind of the overt sexual nature of the character, right? This always gets the girl nature of it, and just kind of make him a little more professional, I suppose, in his role. But I'm
more
not
tortured.
Saying, I guess, but I don't necessarily know if that's an improvement.
Well, they've already reimagined the character quite a few times. Traditionally, it was an anthology series, and the most recent ones have been connected. It's a through line, right?
Well, it actually was an anthology before, then it wasn't again, and then it is again.
That's what I mean. So the reimagining the character, in my mind, means something along those lines.
Right. Maybe going back
how
to
the character's presented, and of course, yes, get rid of a lot of the sexism and the womanizing, and sort of the more negative aspects of his personality.
Yeah, but like
not all of them.
Yeah, like I said, you don't think you need
to have negative aspects to their personality. Right. That's part of who that character is. But the way that they're presented were traditionally, like it's okay for him to do this
right.
stuff.
It was presented in a positive light.
There should be consequences to his actions. So if he's going to go around womanizing, there should be a consequence that he has to face within that movie as a result of that.
Right. And the part I haven't mentioned is that it does not need to be a white man. So, that was where that Idris Elba was at one point. People have been asking for Idris Elba as a James Bond for a long time. I would have loved to see that.
Perfect. I mean, he's a little old now, maybe. I don't know.
It's hard to say when you have Daniel Craig. Like, he's pretty freaking old now, too. Yeah. maybe even if just for like 1 or 2 movies have Idris Elba as James Bond, that would be fun.
He certainly has like the physicality, the suave swagger side of things. Like, yeah, he would be a great James Bond.
Yeah, and he has a sense of humor. I don't know if I think it's about as stiff as Daniel Craig's sense of humor is, but there is something there. So, are you just destroying that pen, or what are you doing?
I'm destroying the cap of the pen.
Okay. So, Jeremy, on to Snyder Cut.
Are we allowed to do a pause at all, or
we can in just a second. We can in just a moment. We have to finish the Snyder Cut stuff.
What do you got to do?
I don't know. Go to the washroom.
Okay. Well, we can pause now and come back for the Snyder Cut stuff.
Wait.
Hold on. I'll put the. Let me switch it to be right back.
Yeah, I was giving you an opportunity to
Okay, and we're back. And Jeremy, I want to turn to you now because we got to talk about the Snyder Cut for a minute, and you're a resident Snyder Cut expert. And the news, I guess I'll just read out the kind of the headlines, and you can fill in the back stuff. So, Jeff Johns and John Berg will not receive production credits, and returning actors include Joe Manganiello as Desmond,
you got it. That
Amber Heard as Mira. Is it not Manganiello?
Yeah, that's
no. Just may as well just spell it Mang and then yellow. At the end.
yeah. Instead of this confusing Aniello. Yeah. Amber Heard is back as Mira. Ben Affleck is back as Batman, which we knew already. Ray Fisher as Cyborg. That's a little bit more surprising. And then Jared Leto as the Joker, which I think is probably the most surprising piece. Jeremy, tell us why we should care.
What do you mean?
I'm just kidding. What do you
think? Emphasizes how epic these 4-hour episodes are going to be. They're going to include a bunch more characters than we thought, and it seems like Zack Snyder's kind of unleashed here to incorporate everything from the DCEU as it used to be known before its apparent canceling. So it's cool. It's I can't wait to see how every episode plays out and ends and teases, and it just seems cool having all these characters come back, and whether even for Jared Leto, right, kind of a second chance to showcase what he wanted to do, since his original performance was, about 80% acts from the last movie.
That was gonna be my first question: is how does he factor in?
Right.
I mean, maybe just
there's rumors that even Harley Quinn's gonna pop up here too.
Well, I wouldn't be surprising. I mean, she's kind of their cash cow so you are breaking the pen. Yeah. Okay. I think what's interesting is this is showing how different this is going to be from whatever original incarnation that let's assume that rewind the clock. Let's assume nothing had happened in Zack Snyder's personal life, and Joss Whedon hadn't taken over and all that kind of stuff. This whatever we're getting, this Snyder Cut that is 4 hours miniseries is going to be even more different than even that original movie was going to be, and I think that's what's interesting.
It's just a progression of people realizing that more and more with these types of announcements. This to me isn't anything new. The conversation for me has always been, that is the case, because if none of that did happen, we would have gotten a Justice League movie that was already a stripped down version of Snyder's Desire and exactly what he wanted to make. So that's even been flipped even more now, is that they're just letting him do whatever he wants. So yeah, I just think it's exciting that we're getting this next year when everything else is canceled or moved, and it's a real first go at high production, popular IP, big actors, as kind of a mini series on a streaming service. So I think that's the conversation.
Sure, but I think I don't know if that's necessarily fair, because I think this is such a once a one-off type of scenario, right? Like where
we'll have to
recutting some former stuff.
Write that in the book now, so we all remember
that you think that Justice League is going to be is going to forewarn. It's going to forewarn. Daniel's trying to write with his broken pen. Is going to be the first of many major production, because sure they're spending $70 million on reshoots here, but they already spent how much $500 million on the previous production of this movie, right? So it's there's I think a little bit of
thought process there is still more connected to the transition of what our world is, and what, when we talked about Disney Plus focusing on streaming. So this is kind of a cool test, without even initially wanting it to be that, right? With who you have involved in it, the major actors involved, and just to see how popular it can be, then we have to see that result, because you can't release a movie in the movie theater.
Sure.
Right? When is that meant to be?
You can't have that change in your head.
They just says, I think it's just 2021. That's all we know.
Yeah,
at this point.
2021. Yeah. They're doing some shoots with actors right now.
It's something to look forward to in 2021, and those are few and far between, right? So that's the takeaway.
Well,
for me.
For me, at 2021 is still all these movies that we're supposed to see today this year may still be able to come out in 2021.
Just
That's the kind of the hope that I
50-50.
have at this point still. I think it's also just mentioning again how Jeff John and John Berger are not getting production credits on this. I'm not surprised. I mean, they basically got removed from the previous incarnation of the project, and this is being rejiggered and rebuilt, and they're not involved. So it would be weird if they did get production credits. Although there is weird rules around how that stuff works in Hollywood. So that's why it is newsworthy, I suppose, but not entirely surprising, I guess. Okay, so we're moving on to a segment we call Agree or Disagree.
That's what we call it.
Agree or disagree. Ba-dum-bum-bum. Degree or disagree.
Degree. Disagree.
Degree or Is it a degree? By how much degree do you agree?
Yeah.
It's a scale. Okay. So this is coming from Drew McQueenie, who's a well-respected writer and critic in Hollywood. He has a weekly newsletter that he puts out. It's paid, but this week he put out for free. This actually last week's edition he put out for free that touched on his view of the state of Warner Brothers, and I think this is interesting. So I'm going to read this. It's a little bit long. I'm not particularly fond, and he's talking about Zack Snyder here. I'm not particularly fond of his take on the DC properties, but that's fine. I don't have to watch them, and there are plenty of other DC films and television properties being made with a fairly wide variety of tones. The problem I see is that the studio itself is simply an IP management company at this point. And the Warner Brothers management that built the studio into the icon it has long since abandoned the... Oh, sorry, let me read back up there. And the Warner Brothers management that built the studio into the icon that it has long since abandoned the company to people who are, in the bluntest possible terms, unfit for the job. It will always be the great cognitive dissonance of this industry that we ask people who are trained to sell widgets or to manage theme parks to be in charge of an art form that requires you to treat each product as special. Movies and TV shows are not widgets, no matter how much executives wish they were. And when they are treated as such, it degrades the entire industry. The rise of the near total dependence on existing IP has crippled the creative team, the quote-unquote creative team at Warner Brothers, and now we're getting $70 million version of Zack Snyder's What If Zack Snyder Never Left the Justice League, and a Space Jam 2 that will largely be an excuse for Warner Brothers IP assets to stand around it barely interacting. And by the way, have you guys heard about what Space Jam 2 is? It's crazy. I'll read it out after this. Instead of treating anything as special, it is all a part of this big gray soup now. Even the moves they make that seem interesting, like last year's Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, they seem perfectly willing to dilute by pouring endless variations of the same character into the pool. If they can get a sequel to that film, they will, and that will also be a massive mistake, a further watering down of something that was fairly singular. They literally can't stop themselves. It's as basic as this. If you don't treat things as you own as special, what makes you think consumers you're selling them to will either? So the question here is, do you agree with the principle that you can't manage a film studio from a business perspective or a business point of view, or will it always be have to be separated into the creative side and the business side, and the two shall never meet?
My response would be, in principle, I don't disagree.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You do not disagree?
Right.
Very strong language you're using.
No. In principle, I do disagree, rather. I disagree. In principle, it should be possible.
Right.
But in practice, it has never been, really. Or rarely it is. When the execs are overly involved, because they aren't as closely tied to the creative process, they're looking at numbers on a spreadsheet. They're not necessarily thinking about the movie, like he says, as something special. So I think that problem exists, but I think just in terms of the actual principle of that question, then I do disagree, because it should be possible for people in those positions to still work with and collaborate with the creative side of things.
Right.
And I don't think I don't think that being an exec means that you're necessarily, by definition, not creative.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just often the case.
It's self-selecting in that
to a degree.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people out there that would make the challenge that this is a business. This is an industry that needs to be treated as a business.
Right.
So those people, the execs, have to think about return on investment.
And there because how do you create movies as big as Justice League without the business side being a major factor?
I really don't want to sound like I'm defending the C-level people,
right?
But it's going to be an unknown factor if they're not familiar with the property. So they try to apply reasoning that they've learned from previous successes.
Mm-hmm.
So something new and creative won't fit into that structure that they already have in place. So it's about getting them to be willing to take risks and also let the creative people handle their project. Once you've signed the papers and said, yes, you, sir, are going to make this Batman movie,
right?
Then it's like kind of step away and let them make their movie.
Right.
They need to
exactly
adopt that.
Yeah. So he's not wrong. It's just the way this is phrased and the examples he's using don't justify what he's saying. It's like it says.
Let me read you the Space Jam 2 synopsis first before you finish that thought. During a trip to the Warner Brothers studio, NBA superstar LeBron James and his son accidentally get trapped within a world that contains all of Warner Brothers' stories and characters under the control of a malfunctioning, all-powerful force named AIG, played by Don Cheadle. Okay, anyway. With the help of Bugs Bunny, LeBron must navigate through a never-before-imagined world filled with iconic movie scenes and characters as they reassemble the Looney Tunes to rescue his lost son. Now, to get back home, LeBron and the Tunes have to unravel AIG's mysterious plan and win an epic basketball game against the digital gamified super versions of the NBA and WNBA's biggest stars as the entire world watches.
I was just waiting for there to be basketball in
it. There has to be basketball in it. Do you think they still have Michael Jordan's special stuff in there? Okay, so sorry, Jeremy. With that now in mind, please.
Okay. Yeah, so the thing here is just to come in defense of how I feel like he's trying to pin the decision with using Warner Brothers and $70 million for original Zack Snyder's Justice League. I think what he's describing already happened or was going on.
Right.
The lack of creativity before the intrusion of Zack Snyder's Justice League. So when he talks about, but now we're getting just $70 million from Warner Brothers, that's not in relation to what he's saying. That already happened before. That is an answer to what he's saying, that AT&T and that merger with Warner Brothers, the decisions up top changed in order to kind of go back in time and fix what he is saying is the state of Warner Brothers. So wait, you could read out someone writing the plot synopsis for Zack Snyder's Justice League, and it would sound just, if not more exciting, especially with the characters involved, that plot synopsis. And you're like, what the heck? That sounds special. So when he says here they're not treating things special, I disagree that the $70 million to Zack Snyder's Justice League, that doesn't go. I think he's using that as a scapegoat for his point. I just think it's a bit jumbled here, and he's using the hot term topic of Justice League.
Right. I think he's using that as an example, but I think he does use other examples here. Again, he uses Space Jam 2. He uses the concept of the Joker movie, which, like he says, I think he's saying was good, but he's saying that they don't have the self-control to not make a sequel to that movie if they can, or you know what I'm saying?
Because they know that Joker was successful. So if they have the option to do Joker 2, somebody up there is going to say, well, Joker 2 made X amount of money, why don't we just do it again? That's the wrong type of mentality. That's what he's trying to express here.
This concept of Warner Brothers no longer being a creative force, but just being an IP management company, I think is very disheartening to me.
I've already been thinking that for a while, though.
I don't even know if that's... Sorry,
Joe. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. Why not let the creatives handle like the story side of things? These guys just manage the properties. Like, okay,
Well,
this
because-
IP you can
No, because
you
they're
can
going.
story
They're
it
going.
implies that
They're
you
going
can't create
deeper
new
than that.
movies.
maybe
Yeah, they're going deeper than that. They like to use that the Justice League again, right? Warner Brothers saw like they brought people in because they saw what was working with Marvel and Avengers,
right.
and they completely changed, their product because they thought it would appease to a wider audience. That failed miserably, right? That's what he's talking about.
I think you're right. I think there's two problems that he's sort of mentioning here, and I don't think that the Snyder Cut is a great example of the first, for sure.
It's
Or
not.
the second
That's
one.
why I feel like it just feels like it's kind of
The
used.
Snyder Cut, it's such a unique situation, and it's never been done before like this. So I don't know why you. Why
because again, read out the
example.
synopsis, right, of Batman.
Well, I think what
forming
he's
a
saying
league
is
and whatnot. It would sound like it would sound like Space Jam 2.
Sure, but if we had no context for that, yes, I think what he's saying is that the studio is, and again, it is a kind of a one-off situation, but he's saying that instead of investing $70 million in new interesting ideas and new creative projects, they're going back and making a new version of this movie that was released in some form.
Yeah,
and again,
it's
without retreading
it's definitely a version of
Right.
of having your cake and eating it too. But I don't see it as, especially in like today's world and what you can pull off, what you can create, what you can make. It's just the perfect timing in terms of your restrictions on that, plus new people in charge who saw how bad things were going before, which is what this guy's talking about. So I just think we got to see what that 70 million, like for his point, we got to see what that 70 million does, and what kind of product, if it's an exciting special product, because it'll have zero interference and just let a creative do their thing. Then we can have this conversation.
I think he's making great points. I don't think the Snyder Cut's a good example of this. What I would say though is if we start seeing a trend of director's cuts made into 4-hour miniseries, then his point is valid, right?
Sure.
If we start seeing that thing repeat.
Well, I think there's also this concept of like leaning on existing properties that they are so hesitant to invest in new ideas that they would rather turn the Air Cut into a 4-hour miniseries for Suicide Squad than they would necessarily make another one. But they did choose to make another one, which I think is it's kind of, again, a little bit of cake you needed to. You're just doubling down on the former investment, the previous investment, right? So
this also brings up the Alan Moore thing that we're not going to really touch on, but in terms of what's popular and what your studios and businesses are willing to invest in to give to people, if they're not receiving money for those things, that means there's no want or desire for it. So that's kind of a sad thing. That they should invest that 70 million, but we're not going to necessarily pay into whatever that would be, because the mind share is cinematic universes, is superhero movies.
Well,
you know what I mean? And
to some extent, they kind of can. They have power over that. They can control that. They can invest in places in different ways. And sure, right now the Marvel Cinematic Universe is huge and very popular, but that doesn't mean it's going to always be that way. And they can choose to follow a trend and go with the easy bets. We see this all the time in Hollywood, right? Well, we know it's popular, so we can invest in. Or you can choose to create the next thing that's going to be that popular, or try
but
to.
It got to this place because they were doing that, and then it wasn't returning anything.
Are you using like BVS as an example? Like, so like Batman versus Superman.
I'm just using.
I'm
saying like just non popular IP or just news stories.
You're not
right?
seeing.
We used to see that all the time, right?
Yeah.
And then it slowly went away for a reason.
Well, but again, I think maybe it's there's two sides to this sword. There's two edges to this blade, because yes, it went away for a reason, because that's what we were starting to be fed. Like the studio said, "Oh, we know we can make money off sequels, so we're going to make more money, and we know that they're going to make X amount." And we saw a bunch of sequels, and then they failed, right? Sure, but they also still have control over that. They have influence over what is popular and what is not, by choosing to make certain things. right?
Yeah, but also it's a gamble though to even set off on that path. And when it's a business, like it's just so hard to try to be the bigger man, or so to speak, and
Right.
just start trying to do that.
Which is kind of what he's talking about here, right? This
Yeah.
idea of the separation of church and state, of creativity, the creative side and the business side, which kind of have to go together, but they're kind of like oil and water.
Well, yeah, but then creative, it's so many different things, right? Like we're talking about like a single director's creative vision. That's being fulfilled here. We're talking about trend with superhero movies and action blockbusters or whatever. That is just a trend that we just want to be in on. So to stop putting your money towards that, it's just a hard decision.
Agreed.
So it's, yeah, you can go back and forth, but I think he's like, I'm not disagreeing with him. I just think the way he's explaining it and using hot topic things, I think he's categorizing things wrongly, but I don't disagree.
Okay. All right. Any final thoughts on our agree or disagree statement? Nope. No. Okay. Moving on to television. HBO Max will be creating speaking of all of that same stuff. HBO Max will be creating a Green Lantern series starring Guy Gardner, Jessica Cruz, Simon Baz, Alan Scott, among other Green Lanterns of note. And Kilowog is in there, exactly. And it's be coming from Greg Berlanti in his production studio. Greg Berlanti, of course, the kind of mastermind behind the CW Arrowverse that is on CW today. Seth Grahame-Smith will be showrunner and will co-write with Mark Guggenheim. It's going to cost $100 million.
That's a huge
that's
budget.
a big budget. What was that's got to be comparable to the Lord of the Rings show, or is that $1 billion?
No, yeah, that's about the same. So Lord of the Rings, if I remember correctly, it was 10 million per episode. So that's exactly on par with it. For context, anybody from Game of Thrones, the Battle of the Bastards episode was at that point the highest budget TV episode in history, and it was $8 million.
So I mean, yeah, which is it's crazy. We live in a very interesting world where we can have $10 million episodes of television. So I'm not I'm not that upset about it. There's gonna be hour-long episodes. There's, like I said, multiple lanterns, and it's gonna span multiple decades, which makes me think it's gonna be more of like an anthology type series, or each episode's gonna follow a different lantern. I mean,
that's a cool idea, yeah.
And especially you have Alan Scott. If you're bringing Alan Scott in there, I mean, that's the original Green Lantern, right? Of kind of a very different style origin and all this kind of stuff. If you're gonna do that, it doesn't. Or maybe it's kind of like, I don't know how you would do it, but maybe it's enveloped in this kind of like storytelling methodology where you have like a new lantern learning about previous ones. I don't know. And maybe you use Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz as that kind of like
the new kids on the block
surrogate, audience surrogate. Jeremy, what do you think? You're the biggest Green Lantern fan among us. What do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of knew of most of this news here, except for I guess this is really just telling us the characters that are going to be involved. But yeah, I've just been pretty high on this for a while. I mean, again, it's HBO, $100 million, 10 episodes, drama series. Like the biggest television show in the world had all those things going for it, right? In Game of Thrones, and one episode was upwards of 8 million. So I just think it's super exciting that we're going to be getting something like this. This is also on the same level like the Mandalorian type feel for me.
Sure.
Just a very epic. Hopefully well executed, especially if they have all this money behind them, and approving Greg Berlanti in terms of handling the DC properties
and least. Complex stories. I mean, you can kind of bash those shows for being very light in tone, for a lot of them anyway. Arrow went through phases, but Berlanti and his teams were always able to balance complex storytelling, do crossovers in a meaningful way. Really,
they've had to include like more characters in those shows too, because that's just what sells, and that's how many episodes they have. A lot more episodes to work with.
22 episodes,
and they want like a lot of actors in there. So here they'll be able to condense that, but with more money and more power behind it. So I just think it's super exciting.
I just think, and if you're going to put $100 million behind a Green Lantern investment, by the way, speaking of bold decisions, I think Green Lantern is, although a popular character among us, certainly, is a very dense property. It is very hard to sell that to, I think, to general audiences. I think that money there is important for effects. It's going to be spent primarily on effects.
Yes.
And with that, and to me, like the best like solution to that is length, right? Is time, right? How many new TV shows on streaming service do you get into after the first episode, second episode, and then it just increases from there the more you learn. So this is just a really good way.
Girth is more important for TV shows in my mind.
Girth? You think girth is
more important than length?
Right. I think, and that, Jeremy, I think that's a really good example, a great point, because The Mandalorian is a really great example of that. Season 1 is very much like Star Wars introductory lesson. They kind of start fresh with the Mandalorian, like Thor and mythology, kind of spoon feeding it slowly to audiences, and you're experiencing it through this new character, right? Season 2 has, I've only seen the first episode of season 2 so far, but it's already leaning into more complex ideas and getting deeper into the mythology. Now that there's a full season under the belt, that people are bought in, and people have Baby Yoda dolls, they can now start telling more complex stories, and you can do similar things with Green Lantern, assuming that $100 million. Like, the thing is, here's the thing: it's that $100 million price tag comes with a lot of expectations, right?
Yeah, but this is also it's like their second outing after a decade, if not more, if it doesn't come out next year, since the original Green Lantern film came out in 2011.
Sure.
So I think that just having that kind of that second go ahead at it, and then having this much behind it, I think they know they can't. It's like one of those situations where they just know they can't fuck it up.
They're certainly set up for success.
Well, I mean,
and then with the characters involved here, it's very interesting because you have a wide variety of different types of characters,
but none of the big ones, though.
Exactly, but so that's also interesting because it will be able to flesh out your secondary characters. We're still big, like if you know Green Lantern, Guy Gardner is a major character. Jessica Cruz, Simon Baz were invented relatively recently, but are modernized kind of type characters.
I really like Jessica Cruz. I think she's a very well created, well written character in most forms that I've seen. I think she's one of the more interesting new additions to the Green Lantern mythos.
And so with HBO Max and Flash and Flashpoint Multiverse, all that stuff coming up, to me, it just shows the layers of the Green Lantern mythos in terms of who's available and what other people are doing. So to me, I see certain names, like obviously Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan notably missing. Also Sinestro, I believe, is a part of this list. You don't have it written there.
Oh, is that true? I didn't realize Sinestro was in it. That's interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No word on Kyle Rayner?
No word.
Kyle Rayner was the one notable one that is missing.
Because we haven't heard of him being involved in any other properties. We know that there's a Green Lantern movie that was being talked about.
Yeah, and it was always Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart kind of at the forefront of that conversation. Right. So I can still see that existing on the outside of this. In this universe, but could potentially get a different type treatment or just show up next season or just save that, right? Because you have so much to build upon if you want to keep it long lasting and like your typical drama series like a Game of Thrones with all these different characters and just stringing things along and having things pay off.
It's so complex. It's like
relationships, right? It's
Star
all about the
Wars
relationships.
and it's like Star Wars and Dune mashed together with and with Game of Thrones, like this idea of like these different. It's just very complex. We tried to remember. We had a whole joke about how we were going to record an episode just explaining the Green Lantern mythology
and I always I always just try to say to shorten it is that it's for me it's about like you have Star Wars, right? The dark side, the light side. It's more so about emotions, right? And the relationships deal with those emotions and then the cores, different cores separate those and people's motives based off that and the power it gives them. Right. So it's definitely complex, right? Because emotion might be one of the most complex things.
Well, it always bugs me a little bit that willpower isn't really necessarily an emotion, but all the other ones are.
Sure it is.
Is it?
I mean, it's a pretty vague.
Right.
Like,
But it's also what you extrapolate to harness willpower, to harness rage or love.
It always
or
feels like
whatever,
it's courage is always feel like what they really want to say,
But it's also tied with fear, right?
Well, so is courage.
Is overcoming. Yes, exactly, right? Because everyone has fears, so that's why I feel like it can be relatable. And with these new characters like a Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz, there's even more variety of relatability there.
I've always sort of read it as, and I don't know if I've ever seen this in a Green Lantern story before, but I've always read the Green as being able to master your emotions, right? Able to control your emotions. So he's not, when he's the Green Lantern, he's not displaying any of the other emotions, including hope,
right?
Including compassion, right? So being
because they feel that the other emotions cloud judgment,
right? And they limit you ultimately.
But that's
like
also
the Jedi.
That's also part of like
right.
the Guardians of the Universe, right? And their flaws in that in that way, right? Because
we really got to
they thought they could control the galaxy, but it ended up spawning other factions that's what creates the drama.
I would just feel like we've talked about this forever. In fact, we might have even done it once early on. But this idea of doing a Star Wars reflected in the Green Lantern lens.
Well, that was the initial conversation that we had that spawned
about the show.
The show, yeah. It was at Tony Roma's.
We just never, I don't think ever fully capitalized it because there's just so many analogies.
The goal with that was that our unique tastes and what we like and what we may not see these conversations happening. Well, why don't we have them? And we bring that, in minor ways to our nerd conversations and what we group together and what we like. So that would just be kind of like a bonus type thing where we just talk about that.
I would love to do that. I think that'd be very fascinating. So any final thoughts on Green Lantern as a series on HBO Max?
Bring it on.
All right, let's do it.
Let's go.
Okay. Oscar Isaac will be taking up switching to Marvel now. Oscar Isaac will be taking up his third role in the Marvel Universe as Moon Knight.
Not confirmed
Disney
yet.
Plus series. He's in talks, but whenever they say in talks, it basically means he has a contract in front of him. So, it's rarely revealed. Like this is all coming through Variety and like good, quality sources. So, it's all but confirmed at this point. It's very rare that actors step back at this point. But Moon Knight, which is a character that is maybe what would you call C tier Marvel character?
Probably D-list,
right? And the only reason I say he was third role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe because Oscar Isaac also played Apocalypse and X-Men Apocalypse, as well as voiced Spider-Man 2099 in the post-credit scene of Into the Spider-Verse. So there you go. He's
universe, but not like MCU.
Yeah, he's touched the Sony's the Sony extended Spider-Man universe, or whatever the heck they call it, the sex or whatever it was called.
They don't call it that. They don't call it that.
And then also obviously the Fox stuff, which is I think interesting as well. So the first touch into the MCU, Moon Knight. I thought one of the interesting things that I heard someone mention about this was that they really got a big star for this character. That's a D-list character, but a character that typically wears a mask most of the time and a hood, and they can do the Mandalorian thing where they really don't have to hire Oscar Isaac to be on set that much. They can just have him voice most of the character most of the time and have body doubles fill in, and which is how they do the Mandalorian. They don't have to pay Pedro Pascal to be on set every day. He comes in and voices a lot of it, and then obviously he's on set for certain scenes where he takes his helmet off or in certain special ones. But you could do the same thing here with Oscar Isaac,
or theoretically, it frees him up to do like at one point it was the plan for Vin Diesel to do Groot and Black Bolt,
right?
Something like that, right?
Yeah. Because he was
the voice of one and the body of the other,
right? Yeah. I don't think they ever followed through with that, unfortunately. So okay, what is everyone's association with Moon Knight? I have almost no experience with him. By the way, just a quick character bio. Mark Spector is his name. They always like to do that thing with names where it's kind of like the Dr. Freeze, Mr. Freeze situation, But so Mark Spector.
I don't see what a Spectre has to do with a knife, but
Moon Knight is kind of like this, like you know what I mean. Imbued with this with a sliver of the Egyptian moon god Khonshu's power. I was like, oh man, that's tough. Has quote unquote lunar strength that increases his abilities under moonlight, and is considered clinically insane.
Yeah. He has some sort of, I don't remember what it is. It's not multiple personalities, but it's something along those. I think it's a form of schizophrenia.
Yeah, it's associative something disorder.
I don't remember
identity
exactly
disorder.
What it is. Yeah.
Dissociative identity disorder.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
But yeah, outside of that, I'm mostly familiar with Moon Knight from the Spider-Man Web of Shadows game. So
I always just get him confused with what's his name from Batman as
Taskmaster.
No, as
Azrael.
Azrael.
Yeah,
Avengers
I know.
As well.
What?
But he looks like Taskmaster.
Yeah, he does also look like Taskmaster, which we expect to see Taskmaster for the first time in the Black Widow movie whenever that eventually comes out. Right. So this is exciting. I think it's interesting that they're doing it as a series, instead of a movie. I think that's maybe makes more sense in this streaming first world for a character of that note. Why do you think this character never really took off in popularity? I know it's always talked about in kind of that like niche kind of like, ooh, what's that character that you'd really want to have as a Marvel, for a Marvel movie? Everyone's like, oh, Moon Knight, but most people don't really even know who Moon Knight is, which is why it's weird.
Yeah, I think he's a cult classic because of mainly aesthetics, the way that
he looks cool.
He looks badass.
Right.
I haven't read enough of his stuff, right?
Yeah, and
the name, you're right.
And people talk about him as being kind of like the Marvel Batman. I've heard them that talked about. I would like to see if that's actually true, for them to kind of maybe lean into that a little bit, and because Iron Man has always felt to me like the Marvel Batman.
When people say that, though, I think they just mean like he's a like dark and brooding figure on a rooftop.
Right. But he has a millionaire like persona.
Yeah, and he has gadgets.
Right.
I guess he throws like a moon batarang, a moonerang,
like a crescent moon,
a boomer moon.
That's dumb. I'm changing the subject now because of that. Jeremy, do you have any thoughts on Moon Knight or Oscar Isaac performing in the role?
Yeah, Oscar Isaac. That's a pretty big get, I would say. And yeah, my experience with Moon Knight, same as Dan, it's from that one particular video game, and seeing some comics from my like older cousin that he left behind at my grandparents' house, like in a big chest. So I didn't read them all. I was like too young. I just like the visual nature of it.
Sure.
Yeah,
he looks cool. I think what's interesting about Oscar Isaac is that he kind of seems to go from these big franchises to another. But he's always felt to me, it's really weird. It's this weird combination of always felt like this like
man.
Yeah, he's like this neat kind of actor who he's very different in all of his roles, and he's kind of traditional style actor, like in the Christian Bale kind of framework. And his kind of smaller roles are really interesting, like in Ex Machina and stuff. But then he plays like he joins these massive franchises, like, and then you always get the impression that he doesn't like being involved. Like when Star Wars was going on, like I got this vibe, and it was fairly obvious that he was like didn't love this whole franchise-ness of it. But then he jumps right to another one in Moon Knight in the MCU, which I think is interesting.
Pays the bills, man.
Yeah, I mean, you got, like you said, you got to pay.
But it's a TV series though.
Yeah, which is a step down. I guess you could say like this is kind of more of a step down, I guess, for him because into a television series. But I don't know if it's necessarily considered that anymore.
I think given the current state, it's a lateral move, right?
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of streaming services, Netflix has increased its prices again. Standard price is now $14 a month, and premium is now $18 a month in the States. The question then becomes, how much is too much? What's the cap? This is, by the way, in the States, so I don't know if this will translate into increases in Netflix fees in Canada. Probably will. What's the cap? How much would you because obviously they're trying to eke it out. Like where is the amount that people will pay the most for, but without going over. Right. Is $20 too much?
I don't think so.
At the standard price, $20 a month standard.
It really depends on content. They've been putting out a lot of original content lately, so it is worthwhile if you're into that kind of stuff. It depends on the quality of the content. That's
right
up for debate.
It's all Dan. It's always going to appeal to you because it's designed by an algorithm to appeal to you.
It's the world we live in now. It's out of our control what we enjoy.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's tough because it has to be a competitive price with the other existing platforms. Netflix is in a good position. Like they were the market leader and they can kind of set the price. Crave is more than that. Crave is 20.
Crave is at least $20 a month, I think. And then if you add HBO,
Amazon's a bit different because you pay for it with your Amazon Prime.
So you're getting other
memberships, you're getting other perks. So it's like $80 a year or something like that.
Yeah, it's not. It's hard to compare directly. And then here's the problem, though, right? And this is the thing we've been worried about since Netflix became popular, which is that at what point are you just paying for all these streaming services that they equate to the same amount that you were paying for cable? $100, $150, $200 a month for cable, and it's like now you got okay. Let's name them all: Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus.
That's good.
Universal Plus, Peacock, Hulu.
But everybody knows
Crave,
everybody knows Netflix though, right? Like that's like it's always going to be at the top. Well, at least for now. So I think if someone else is more expensive than them, I think that it's like a power move. It could also it's a power move in terms of like we're the best. You got to pay for us, which means you might discontinue with another one.
Well, it's a bit interesting. It feels like a bit of an arms race, right? Yep. Where you've got like the Mandalorian is kind of driving people to Disney Plus, and people are
Amazon has a ton of good original content lately. Amazon's investing hugely in
and they're gonna when Lord of the Rings comes out, you got to know that that's gonna pull some eyeballs, right? And it just really it seems what it's doing is just driving up the cost of shows, so that you're ending up with $100 million Green Lantern shows on HBO Max and $100 million Lord of the Rings shows on Amazon Prime.
You're right.
Someone's got to pay for it.
It's also part of this concept of right now shifting to the new model.
Right.
If movies are going to be released on streaming services with more frequency, it didn't work for Mulan when they wanted to charge people an extra cost. So they have to factor that into their subscription costs now. Right.
Right. Yeah. They've also removed their 30-day free trial period. I think that does make a little bit of sense because if you really wanted to, you could watch so much Netflix in 30 days.
It just gets rid of those people that are there for one or two shows.
Right. Yeah. If you want to buy in, and by the way, Disney Plus did the same thing right before Mandalorian came out. It was like if you want to watch this, you want to watch it, you're gonna have to pay. You're not gonna.
Here's what I did. I told you guys the other day when we recorded. Right. I had a subscription to Shudder briefly. Right. It was just for one show for Blood Machines, but I did deliberately let the trial period end, so I would pay one pay period.
Why?
Because I felt like I owed it to them, sort of like because I want to support the idea of that platform at least.
Not so much that you want to actually subscribe, but you just want to like here's a donation. They're like $5 donation.
They're the underdogs. They're the little guy, but they have the right intent. They're putting up. There's a lot of content on Shudder. It's just not all my type of stuff.
Jeremy, I was talking to this with Dan before the episode started. And I want to know what you think about this. So Shudder has this really cool idea, I personally think, of this television channel. So you can go to the Shudder channel in the app, and it's just always playing content from the streaming service, like it would, like you would go to switch to TBS and a movie would be on. I think that's brilliant. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I think every streaming service should have that. I think
because then you're just having a genre channel basically.
Yeah. If you want, you could get more complex, and you could have Disney Plus could have like a Disney movies channel and just only animated Disney movies or whatever, and a Marvel one or just only Marvel movies. But like even Netflix, you could just put on the Netflix channel, and it's got like kids programming in like the middle of the day, and then like it gets a little bit darker in the evening. It's like it could be really interesting because how many times have you been on a streaming service and just scrolled through the stuff, not knowing what to watch, and then don't watch anything? That's like the solution for that.
Invest that much, a lot, right? Or like there's a level of investment that you feel like you have to take. So if you're feeling like a comedy genre or whatever, you just turn that on, and then it's just a random episode, and you don't feel you have to invest that much. But then you might get into something that you'll go into the actual show tab and then watch the rest of that show.
I think it's brilliant. Daniel seems to disagree.
I suppose it should go without saying that's an obvious regression, right? That's just going back to cable TV.
Well, I mean, I think
that what happened, the natural progression of that would be now you have multiple channels on the streaming service, and you can choose to subscribe to certain ones that have certain types of content.
But I think what it could. I think it is a little bit of both. I agree that it feels like a regression, but I think it's taking the things that we liked about television, right? the traditional way.
That is available at the click of a button.
No, it's not just available at the click of the button. Is that it's been programmed. Someone's done the thinking to program this thing for you, and so you don't have to necessarily worry about deciding on something. You can just turn it on, and then also, and I think this is another really interesting thing that I think could, if kind of an offshoot of that, is what it allows you to potentially do is create a time of day again where that show is on. So The Mandalorian doesn't just drop at 3 a.m. at midnight or whatever on the West Coast. It now airs on Friday nights at 8 p.m. Central, whatever, and it's on the channel, whatever, the Disney Plus channel, and it also is available to stream at that exact moment, right? That not only creates the week-to-week model, recreates that again, but it also recreates the event television. We're all doing this at the same time, which does actually, I think, have some bearing. I think that people enjoy that. It's like the reason people like watching those award shows. You're enjoying the experience at the same time as other people. We don't really have that. Really, HBO kind of has that now. They're really the only ones. Crave had the ability to watch just HBO channels on it, but I never really used it much, but it was an option. And you could watch, it would air right at 10 p.m. or whatever, the new Lovecraft Country would be available, right? I think that makes perfect sense. And the fact that they're not doing it is mind-boggling to me, actually. It seems so obvious.
Baffling.
Yeah. Okay, let's wrap up here. There's only a couple of stories left. Disney says it's focusing primarily on streaming. We mentioned that already. This is all happening while at the same time Amazon is arguing that you don't actually own any purchases that you made on Amazon Prime Video, which I don't know if we have time to get into this right now, and maybe we have to defer it for another episode. But the conversation between physical hardware or physical media and streaming content is very fascinating, because if you buy something, this is different than like buying subscription and just inherently don't feel like you own it.
To it.
But if you buy something on Amazon Prime Video, right, and they're telling you don't own that, well, what does it mean to even own anything? I guess generally that becomes a complicated question. And then if physical media is going away, does this help keep that alive? I don't know. There's a lot of questions there, and I don't think we have time to get into it right now. But think about that. We're going to come back to it.
I think the way it's phrased on Amazon, though, to be fair, is that it's renting, not buying. But anyways, we'll discuss it in the next episode.
Right. And then a live-action Assassin's Creed series is coming to Netflix. It's in development at Netflix. Why? What are you talking about?
Skip all of those bullets.
Wasn't Oscar Isaac in a Assassin's Creed movie? Is that Oscar Isaac?
No.
Who was the lead in that?
Magneto.
Oh yeah, Michael Fassbender. You're right. Sorry. I was thinking about the other X-Men character. So here are all the video game content series or whatever that they have it planned for Netflix. It's actually quite robust list. So Castlevania Season 4, Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, and I think the Resident Evil one is supposed to take place inside the video game canon, which I think is interesting. Cyberpunk Edge Runners, which sounds like Cyberpunk. Splinter Cell, The Division, Devil May Cry, Final Fantasy, and Cuphead. So Cuphead, yeah, which is kind of funny because it's based on like old animation. It's kind of coming full circle. So this is kind of basically the golden age of video game live adaptations at this point.
I wouldn't call it the golden age.
Well, until only age. This is just the only age.
It's the first age,
right? Yeah.
I think we can do better. Like I'm sure that these are well made.
Uncharted is also coming to theaters. Come on, we got Monster Hunter.
Jury's out on that. Yeah, Monster Hunter looks like a traditional video game movie.
Right. It's because it's coming from Paul Anderson or whatever his name is. Not Paul Thomas Anderson. That's the other. They have very similar names. The very famous, very good director, and then the less good director who makes the Resident Evil movies. Is any of these for either of you guys? Anything off this jump out to you? I mean, I've really enjoyed Castlevania, so I'm looking forward to more of that.
Are they all animated?
I don't think so. I think the Assassin's Creed is going to be live action, but I think they're also doing it. I remember seeing they're also doing an animated Assassin's Creed thing at the same time. So I think it's interesting because it's showing that Netflix is clearly looking at video games as a source of inspiration for their content.
I think the choices here are cool, right? They all have cool stories, right? Castlevania, cool. Resident Evil, Cyberpunk. Devil May Cry, Final Fantasy, Cuphead. I would say Splinter Cell and Division.
Both Tom Clancy stuff.
The Tom Clancy stuff, though, right? So that makes sense there because, if video games are obviously hugely popular, but like the most popular video game is Call of Duty, right? Like no one's going to be
right.
wanting to watch a Call of Duty show or movie because
I think technically the most popular video game is technically the most popular video game is actually Fortnite, but technically. Sorry.
Well, in terms of sale, it's not. But yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know how you count. I mean, it's certainly
the number one selling game every year last decade was a Call of Duty game.
But that's because Fortnite's free. It's a whole different thing. But yeah,
but the last decade.
Well, yeah, sure. Again, I'm just saying that like that's been true for 10 years. But I think what I'm saying is I think that's shifting to a different thing. Call of Duty will still be important, I think, in video games.
The point is that it's about the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Fortnite, you're not gonna get a Fortnite movie, like you might because of the popularity. But I'm saying
you got an emoji movie, Jeremy. Don't.
Like these are just good IPs in terms of story and world.
Right. I think I would be surprised in a good way if there weren't a Fortnite movie within the next 5 years.
That's like you had the Angry Birds movie, the emoji movie, like you said. I'm saying that this list is good because of the worlds like they call for long form storytelling or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Deep war, like lots of lore.
Whereas the popular video games, Fortnite,
call me when they're doing Mortal Kombat. Is all I gotta say.
They are doing Mortal Kombat.
That's still the best.
And call me that.
I mean, that's still the best adaptation. Is that first one?
You think that's the best video game adaptation?
MK1.
Yeah. Interesting. I think it's the most true to the its source material.
I mean, it's a low bar, but it is.
I thought for sure you would have thought the first Resident Evil, Jeremy. But
no,
that was decent too.
It's good, yeah, but I don't know. Mortal Kombat's really good to me.
Okay, so let me rattle off these final news stories here. Ted Lasso has been renewed for season 3. I have had season 2 production. I mentioned this on our movie club, but I had to mention it on the main show. Amazing show. You need to be watching it. I understand that me really liking it makes Dan and Jeremy less likely to watch it, but trust me on this. It's very good. Archer is renewed for season 12. Star Trek Discovery renewed for season 4. These are all very good shows who are people are investing in them, and they're getting new seasons. This is good news, people. New episodes of Euphoria coming in December, Jeremy. This has got to be up your alley, right?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay, cool.
I still haven't watched that show.
Why do we need to be excited about Euphoria?
Just so good.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll make you a trade, Jeremy. I'll watch Euphoria if you watch Ted Lasso.
Sure.
Okay, deal. I don't feel like you're gonna keep up your end of the deal. There is a sequel series to Saved by the Bell coming to Peacock that features the return of Zach and Kelly along with a new cast of teenagers. I watched the trailer. It has the exact same tone as the original Saved by the Bell, which is, I think, impressive that they were able to capture that, even though it kind of feels weird in 2020.
This is the world we live in. Like, I mean, we watched what was that trailer we watched before we started recording?
Oh, for Animaniacs.
Animaniacs. Like
right.
they're bringing back this stuff from our childhood. It makes sense. I think this is again one of those more executive decisions. Like they've done the math on this now, and that people are nostalgic enough that they're responsive to these old IPs. But
right, I think with Animaniacs it's a little bit different. I think there's a little bit of push there. Spielberg feels like he has attachment to those characters, and it's kind of coming from him. And
that trailer is entirely targeted at us, not a
right, because it's
generation.
Using Jurassic Park as the lead-in. And I mean, although I think kids today know what Jurassic Park is, right?
But that's not the point. The kids today aren't going to appreciate the reference.
No, they won't. Right. These cartoon characters have been extinct since 1993, right? Like 1993 might as well be 1973.
98. But
right.
Yes.
Right. By the way, I liked that trailer for the record, for the not for the Saved by the Bell thing. It's whatever, but the Animaniacs.
It's just like, I mean, I know I'm not going to watch either of them.
Fair enough.
So.
Yeah. David Fincher confirms that Mindhunter is being put on hold for now. Quote, for the viewership that it had, it was a very expensive show, which is classic blunt David Fincher, which I always appreciate. And I know people really like that show. I haven't watched it for some reason. It's David Fincher. I should just watch it. But Jeremy, have you watched Mindhunter?
No.
I feel like it'd be right up your alley. I feel like it's David Fincher doing a crime series. Like it's like I don't know. It just heard it's good for some reason. It's that investment thing you mentioned before. I just don't feel like I have the ability to get invested enough to watch that show. And then lastly, Willow is coming back as a series to Disney Plus with Ron Howard and Warwick Davis returning.
Damn,
He's reprising his role.
Yeah, you big Willow fan, Daniel?
I like Willow. Yeah.
I don't
Cool
know. I have
fantasy
no
property.
connection to Willow. I have zero.
I was terrified as a kid. I was scared. The movie scared me.
Interesting.
There's like these floating blobs.
Page
that kinda
Master
get
terrified me as a kid. For
you.
that.
Well, they go into the horror book. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that one really got me. Willow.
Ted's having he's having a flashback.
It was those weird. I don't even know what they're called. Those weird like floating blobs that come after people. Those were terrifying to me.
Fair enough. Okay, so we can end on our final segment, which is what we've been watching. And Dan, you've been watching Lovecraft Country. You finished that. And what did you think of that show?
Yeah, I mean the show came out quite a while ago.
Well, not that long ago. It's still fairly recent. Its final episode was like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I thought it was much longer
No,
than
yeah.
that. No, I loved it. I think it kind of trailed off towards the end a bit and got a bit too like action and sci-fi oriented.
Really trying to juggle a lot of balls, and I think it drops a few of them by the end of the series.
Well, because it's doing that thing like much like Rick and Morty, how it kind of incorporates basically any sci-fi concept you can imagine. Same with Altered Carbon, by the way. It's like there's clones, there's uploading your consciousness into another form. There's some forms of time travel. There's all these sci-fi concepts, in this one spot. Lovecraft Country does similar stuff, but it does it with cosmic horror elements. I think it has a very strong beginning, like first half of the season.
I think the first episode, the pilot is amazing.
Yes.
And the second episode is not very good. And then I think it's a mixed bag from there on. I really liked the National Treasure Uncharted-esque episode, not maybe Last Crusade is better reference type episode. I think that's like the 5th or 4th episode. I really like that.
It really does feel like a true Lovecraft story. Like there's elements of main character having this family heritage that he wasn't aware of is a huge one. The adventure that they go on, it's weird how they all kind of just immediately understand magic.
Yeah,
but I think the idea is that there's something intrinsic because of their bloodlines. I think there's some very terrifying moments. There's a lot of really gore focused moments.
Yeah.
That I'm not typically a huge fan of, but they're all story driven. It's not just for the sake of grossing people out.
Yeah.
There's some really intense scenes, but then also what is interesting about it is all of that cosmic horror sci-fi stuff, cool, but that's all relatively superficial. And then it takes the time to go into hot button contemporary American issues in terms of race from a black perspective predominantly, and literally having characters speak openly about their experience as the one example I'm thinking of as a black woman in America. Right. This character was given the opportunity to be white for a day essentially, and she had this experience. Then that she's talking about it,
like changed her life. It's
something
crazy,
that I can't imagine, obviously, but it's insane that they went there. They went to that level of depth with that character. I thought that was very
and I
impressive.
think the performances are also really, really, really good. But this
across the
HBO is particularly known for that. But I think the father character, what's his name? Atticus?
Michael K. Williams is a phenomenal actor in anything, and he's great.
He does a very good job as playing this kind of tortured father figure. I think the most unfortunate part is that my favorite character dies in the first episode. Spoilers. But they just do such a good job of kind of fleshing out the character dynamics. I think that's the best part of the whole series. I just ultimately think it's doing a lot of stuff. Like it uses contemporary music. It's like it does. That. I think it's just too much. Like you're already doing all the sci-fi stuff. You're already doing this like magic stuff. You're doing all these other things, and now you're going to throw in this kind of like this. I'm trying to think of the word. There's a word for it, but this music that doesn't fit the time period.
Right. It's 1950s America.
Right, and it's like you're just another thing thrown into this pot, and it's just a lot. It's just a lot of stuff.
I didn't find that took me out of the experience at all. I found, if anything, that actually made it more enjoyable. It's just like a cool beat that you can listen to. It doesn't actually affect the story at all. It's just getting you from one scene to the next.
I do like their credits music, though, which has always been one of my favorite songs of all time, which is that Sinnerman by Simone. Okay, anyway, that classic song from that movie about stealing that picture, that painting. What the hell is that movie called with Pierce Brosnan? Can you help me out here?
Yeah, I don't have it on the top of my head. I know you're talking- Crown Prince or
No,
Thomas Crown Affair.
Thomas Crown Affair. Yes.
Crown Prince. I do think Lovecraft Country though that towards the end it gets a little crazy. It's about a family, and so there's mother and aunts and these people that are all affected by this mystery that have no experience with magic at all or any sort of martial arts. But there are a few scenes where just all of these family members involved are just karate experts. There's like zombies coming at them, and the old aunt is like throwing elbows and stuff. So that's a bit much. But outside of that, I thought it was a great show. I think it's weird that it exists in a world where Lovecraft also existed. But I was able to get over that. They addressed that within the first episode, and then they basically never talk about it again.
Yeah,
so.
I remember I mentioning how I was really how I really enjoyed the first episode, and I was telling you about it, and I was saying how they talk about Lovecraft specifically, H.P. Lovecraft, and you're like, I don't know how I feel about that, and I'm glad to hear that you were you got over that, or it didn't affect your viewing of it. Jeremy, do you think you'll watch Lovecraft Country?
Probably not.
Probably not. Okay. Has everyone seen the finale for The Boys?
Yeah.
I think
Season 2.
I think so.
I know we haven't. I feel like we haven't talked much about the show, and maybe we need to do just kind of like a super late kind of like in-depth spoiler conversation about Season 2. But does anyone have any kind of thoughts about Season 2? I think it does a really good job of kind of wrapping things up, but there's been some comments about how it doesn't really set itself up that well for a sequel. That kind of the problems have kind of been solved in a lot of ways. There is definitely some room, and I think there is that big twist at the end without revealing it.
Well, I think what we should do then is set up a separate show for that because we're getting late. I gotta go right away.
And I also so I don't want to get into it right now. Yeah, so we will do that. We have we'll find a day to do that. By the way, so I mentioned before, The Mandalorian Season 2 is premiered as of yesterday of this recording. And Star Trek Discovery Season 3 premiered last week or the week before. So those are really good. We're not going to be covering Star Trek, but we are going to be covering The Mandalorian Season 2. We'll be recording that tomorrow. We'll be doing, I don't know if every episode will be recorded on Sundays, but we'll try to make it as consistent as possible. And we'll be doing recaps of that as well. And Rachel from Small Screen Star Wars will be on that as well, covering that with us. Jeremy, do you believe you'll be joining us for those Sunday specials?
Probably not.
Probably not. Okay, that's okay. That's okay.
You don't ask that on the air. What's wrong with you?
I can cut it out. Okay, so with that, we can wrap things up. Please, again, follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast, Facebook.com/Tower Babblecast. Help support the show over on Patreon, patreon.com/Tower Babblecast, where as little as $5 a month, you can help sustain the show, and in exchange, you get our Daniel, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. You're going to break the pen. You're going to break another pen. This one I like. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. Help support the show. In exchange, you get bonus content, specifically the movie club, which we've changed the format on, which will be starting, I guess, in December.
We'll see.
Or January. More like January, probably. And you can find that, and that's obviously included in the support for the show on Patreon. So patreon.com/Tower Babblecast. If you have any thoughts, comments, concerns, towerbabblepodcast@gmail.com is the best way to reach us, but you can also reach out to me on Twitter. And if you're in our Patreon, you can join our Discord and chat with us there. Anything else? Am I missing anything? Have I gotten anything? Towerbabblepodcast.ca. That was the one that I forgot. Okay. We'll be back with more TOB very soon.
Extremely soon.
Literally tomorrow.